This is part 95 of jQuery tutorial. In this video, we'll discuss customizing droppable widget. This is continuation to part 94, so please watch part 94 before proceeding. Here's the example that we worked with in the previous video session. We can drag and drop the country names onto the countries box and the cities onto cities box. We discussed of achieving that in the previous video session. We want to customize this a bit more. Now, when I drag a country name and when it's over its drop destination, that is in this case over this countries box, we want to change the background color of that countries box to green, indicating that it's the right drop destination for the country that we are dragging at the moment. Okay, so let's see how to achieve that. Now, when an item is over its drop destination, an event is raised, and that is over event. So let's go ahead and handle that event. First, I'm going to create a style class within our style section. Let's call it highlight, and we're actually going to change the background color to green and font color to white, and I'm also going to change border to 3 pixel solid black or solid gray. Okay, alright, so whenever an acceptable draggable is over its drop destination, we know that over event is triggered. So here we are in the context of that div countries element, so I'm going to handle the over event. So let's associate a function. So this is the function that gets called when that event is triggered, and this function is going to have two parameters: the event that occurred and the UI element that triggered that event. So what do we want to do when over event is triggered? We want to set this highlight class as the class for this div element. So I'm going to use this keyword to refer to the div element because we are within the context of that div element, and I'm going to call add class function, and I'm going to specify our highlight class which we have just created. Alright, so when an acceptable draggable is over its drop destination, then this style class will be applied to countries development. Let's do the same thing with cities. Okay, so when a city is dragged over cities box, we want to change its background color also to green. Okay, so let's go ahead and save our changes, reload this page. Look at this, when I drag a country onto the cities box, nothing happens. But when I drag it over countries, look at that, the background color is changed to green. When it's out, look at that, the background color is not changed to its original color. We'll look at that in just a bit. Similarly, if I drag a city onto the cities box, look at that, the background color changes. And when a city is out of that droppable, we want to bring it back to its original color. So when an acceptable draggable is out of its drop destination, out event is triggered. So let's go ahead and handle that as well. So just like over, we also have out event, and we want to handle that event as well. So there's the event handler function, and what we want to do now is remove that highlight class. So I'm going to use remove class function, and let's do the same thing with cities droppable. So let's associate out here. Let's save our changes, reload this page, and look at this. When an acceptable draggable is over its drop destination, background color is green. When it's out, it's back to what it was. Okay, and if I try to do the same thing with cities here, look at that, this is not the right draggable for cities drop destination. That's why nothing happens. So let's go ahead and drag a city. Look at that, background color changes and it reverts back. Alright, so to achieve this, we are making use of two events, over and out. Instead of these two events, we can actually use an option. There is an option called hover class, so we can make use of that option instead of hooking up two event handlers. So let's actually comment these two, and let's do the same thing with cities, And what we can do is, instead of that, I can specify hover class option. So the class that we are going to specify here will be applied when an acceptable draggable is over its drop destination and out of its drop destination. So basically, hover class is going to be our highlight class that we have just specified. So it's going to add that class when the item is over its droppable destination, and as soon as it's out of droppable, the class will be removed. So let's do the same thing with the cities box. Let's save the changes, reload this page, and look at this. And let's try with the city, and it works the same way. Now let's look at activate and deactivate events. Now what we want to do is, at the moment when the draggable is over its drop destination, that's when we are changing the background color. Now let's say for some reason immediately when I start to drag an item, that's when I want to change its appropriate drop destination's background color to green. So if you want to achieve that, then you can make use of activate and deactivate events. Activate event is raised as soon as you start to drag an acceptable draggable, and deactivate event is raised as soon as you stop dragging. Okay, so let's make use of those two events. So I'm going to actually comment this hover class option as well, and let's associate activate. So that's activate event, and we want to handle that. So function, again, it's going to receive event and the UI element that triggered the event. And what we want to do here is add that highlight class, and when deactivate event is raised, we want to do a similar thing. Let's actually copy this code and paste it right here. So basically we want to remove the class when deactivate event is raised. So let's copy this code and paste it within cities development. So let's comment this hover class. Alright, so let's save our changes, reload this page, and look at this. As soon as we start to drag a country name, look at that, the background color of the countries is changed to green, and if I stop dragging, look at that, it changes back to its original color. Similarly, when we start to drag a city name, the background color of cities box is changed. Stop the dragging, and look at that, it's back to what it is. Now again, instead of using activate and deactivate events, you can make use of active class option. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So instead of these two events, I'm going to use active class option, and let's specify the class. The class is highlight. So when we are dragging the acceptable draggable, this class will be applied. As soon as we stop dragging, the class will be removed. That's what this active class option is going to do. Let's apply this to countries div as well. Alright, so let's save our changes, reload this page, and look at this. When we start to drag country, we have the same behavior. When we stop it, it changes back. Similarly, when we drag a city's background color is changed. As soon as we stop, it's back to what it was. Alright, now let's look at this helper option. In the previous video session, we discussed this option of the draggable widget. In the previous session, we have set helper option to a string clone. So what is this going to do? This is actually going to clone the item that we want to drag and make that item draggable. Look at that, we are dragging the clone of the original item. Now at the moment, the value it is accepting is a string. The value can also be a function. Okay, so I can specify a function here instead of clone, and here you can specify the DOM element that you want as a helper, as a dragging helper. Now let's say for some reason, instead of a clone, what I want is, I want the text of the item that I'm dragging, and that text should be bolded and underlined. Okay, so how to achieve that? We can return that element from here. So I'm going to return a bold element, and I also want an underline, and the text that I want is $this. So here this is going to reference the item that we are dragging. The item that we are dragging is a list item, and let's use the text function to retrieve its text, and let's close the underline and bold elements. Underline and bold, so we're closing both of them. Alright, so let's save the changes and let's reload this page, and look at this. Now the drag helper will be changed, to the element that we have specified in our function. So the list item text that is bolded and underlined, when I drop it, we actually add the original list item to the drop destination. The same with city names. Thank you for listening and have a great day.